As you've learned, the essential formula to calculate the volume of a prism or a cylinder is as follows. You're going to take the area of whatever the base is. So a cylinder would be like a circle, but a trapezoidal prism would be a trapezoid. So whatever the base is, you'll take the area of that, and then you're going to multiply it by the height. I don't really need these parentheses, but I just want to differentiate between you're going to multiply this by whatever this is. Okay, and that'll work for any prism or cylinder because the shape of the base is consistent all the way to the top. So like if you're doing a cylinder, it's a bunch of circles stacked on top of one another. Okay, something to note about the height is if you're calculating, and this is something we've already learned, but if you're calculating surface area, then you need the slant height of whatever your 3D shape is. But if you're calculating volume, you need the actual height. I'm just going to call that the height. Now to emphasize why this makes sense, the slant height is the height on the surface of the shape, which is why it calculates surface area. Whereas the regular height is the height on the inside, or what you can say is it like goes through the shape. I was going to draw an example of this, but I realized I'm really bad at drawing pyramids. So let's take a look at what slant height versus height is in this visual. So slant height is on the surface of the shape, which is why you need it for surface area, because it's the height that'll tell you the height of the triangle that's on the surface. Whereas the height here would be the height from, well in this case it would be from the apex to the ground, which is in the middle of the shape, or like inside the 3D shape, which is the height that we need to calculate volume, because volume is what's inside. So surface area needs the height that's on the surface, volume needs the height that's like inside the shape. Okay, just a key difference to start noting, and we'll talk about this more and more. So I want you to explain why this formula makes sense based on the demonstration I did. You're going to write that in your own words. You can pause the video and do that. Okay, now for some examples, we're going to find the volume of a couple different shapes, and there's also an example of if you're given the volume, find the missing dimension. So this is one of those like working backwards problems that we practice. Working backwards. So I'll do one of each type, and you can do the one that I didn't do. So to find the volume, the general formula for a prism or a cylinder is the area of the base, whatever the base is, times the height. Okay, now in this case, the base is a triangle. So to calculate the area of the base, I have to do base times height divided by 2. Okay, times whatever the height of the whole shape is. Now I know this gets confusing because there's two heights, but let's just differentiate between what those are. So this is the height of the triangle, and this is the height of the 3D shape. Okay, so I know they're both heights, but they're different heights. If you want to call them something else, it's up to you. Okay, so to find the area of the triangle, it's base times height divided by 2. So in this case, the base would be right here, and the height would be right here. So I know the height is 6, but I don't know the base. So in this case, well, I don't know the base over here either, so I'm actually going to have to calculate it. So I know that this is 6, and I know that this is 8, I know that this is 90 degrees. Oh, so we have a right triangle here, and I can find the length of the missing side. So let's just focus on this triangle, because that's the right triangle. I'll just redraw that. So this is 6, this is 8. I have to find the missing side so I can find my base. Okay, so a squared plus b squared equals c squared. We'll solve for missing sides of a right triangle. So a is one of my legs, so it can either be x or 6, it doesn't matter. So it's going to be x squared plus 6 squared, and c is always my hypotenuse, which is 8. Okay, and again, this is going to help us find that missing side of a right triangle, but I have to finish solving. So I'm going to do this quickly because we've been doing this forever. So x squared plus 36 equals 84. I just squared those. Got to subtract 36 from both sides. So x squared equals 48. Now, in order to get x alone, I have to take the square root of both sides. Okay, because a square and a square root undo each other. So x equals the square root of 48, which you can get a decimal in your calculator. It'll be like 6.9, and I'll round that 2 up to 3. So that's approximately 6.93. Okay, so now I can plug those into my formula to find the area of the triangle. So the base is 6.93, and that's rounded, so just keep that in mind. Okay, the height is the height of the triangle, because we're finding just the area of the base. So that's 6 divided by 2. And whatever the area of the base is, I have to multiply that by the height to find the volume. So the height of the whole shape is how tall this prism is. Now this prism is kind of on one of its lateral faces, but if you kind of put it sitting on a triangle, how tall it would be is this 12 right here. And that'll calculate the total volume of this shape. Okay, so just plugging that in my calculator, this is the area of just the triangle. It would be about 20.78. Okay, if I simplify this, multiply that by 12, and you'll get the volume of the whole shape. So it's about 249.42. We'll round that up. 249.42. And I should say that's approximately because I've rounded. And since we're talking about volume, you always measure volume in cubic units. So for area, it'd be like meters squared, but for volume, it's going to be meters cubed. Okay? And that would be the volume of a shape. You can try this one on your own when you are done with the video. Okay, the last one you have to work backwards. So you're given the volume, and you want to find the dimension. So in this case, we want to find the height. So I want to write the formula down first. I know that the area of the base times the height equals my volume of my cylinder. Okay, I'm writing this formula down so I can plug in what I know to solve for what I don't know. And it's really important to say equals volume because this is actually something I'm going to plug in. So I know that that's the volume. It's going to be plugged into my V. Okay, area of my base I can find. What I'm trying to solve for is my height. So my height is like my big question mark here. And if that's my big question mark, that should be the only thing that's not filled in. Okay, so I'm going to plug in what I know to solve for what I don't know. So volume is 902.75. Okay, area of the base, well, I don't know it right yet, but I know the base is a circle. And to calculate the area, a circle is pi r squared. So it would be pi times my radius squared, which is 5 squared. Okay, now I don't know what my height is, but it's called x, so I'm just going to multiply by x. Ooh, and that's really confusing to say there, because that looks like a multiplication sign times x. So what we do, instead of writing the x, because it's like xx times x, that's really confusing, people stopped writing the multiplication symbol and just put parentheses. So if you see parentheses, it just means we're multiplying those two things. Okay, so to simplify this up, I want to do pi times 5 squared, so 5 squared is 25. So this is 25 times pi, which I'll do in my calculator. Okay, which is about 78.5. Okay, so 78.5 times x. So I can just write it like this without any parentheses. 78.5x means 78.5 times x, which is equal to 902.75. Okay, now to get x alone, you have to undo what's bothering the x. So right now this is 78.5 times x. In order to undo that 78.5, we have to divide. Division undoes multiplication. Okay, if you do that, these will cancel because anything divided by itself is just 1. And then I'll have to do 902.75 divided by 78.5 in my calculator, which would give you that x is approximately 11.5. And it's approximate because I rounded pi and I've been rounding my answers. So it's about 11.5 for my height. Okay, so to work backwards, you're going to write down your formula, plug in what you know, and solve for what you don't know. Okay, so that's how you calculate volume. You do need to know this formula, so make sure you study that. Okay, and just make sure you fill this out. Try the problem that I didn't do. And make sure you note about the different heights, because we're going to talk about that, especially when we get into pyramids and cones. Okay, please ask questions if you have any.